lovely people, Nina here. So this week I read and finished Sunny Days, which is the children's television revelation that changed America by David Camp. This book is so good. And when I first picked it up and I read it, I think even in one of my other videos, I was like, I'm so excited to read this because it's all about Sesame Street. I neglected to read this part, so I saw Sunny Days and I saw that Big Bird on the front and I was like, oh yeah, it's all about Sesame Street. And I started reading it and I was like, oh, it's cute. It includes other shows along with Sesame Street. And I was like, oh wait, this isn't just about Sesame Street, this is about other shows on PBS Kids, which would be why the title, the children's revelation that changed America. This book, I loved this book so much and I would read it again, easily. This is about, it starts with Sesame Street and it follows the history of Sesame Street and how they decided they needed children's programming and children's shows that were also educational, because at the time, the 60s, they didn't have programs that were educational for children, and it was just purely entertainment, and so they wanted to change that and help kids learn. And so there was a whole debate, and they ended up with a Sesame Street. And one of the funny things about Sesame Street, there are a few bits in here that I really loved, but one of the funny things with Sesame Street, okay, so they basically all threw out name suggestions, and I don't remember what the woman's name was off the top of my head, but she said, what about Sesame Street? And because no one could think of anything else, they just went with it. And so it was just kind of random that it was called Sesame Street. But there's a whole thing in this about diversity and how they wanted to expose kids to diversity and basically show that there's a whole thing on showing how the city isn't so bad, and they wanted to make it more I don't know, normalized, I guess, and show children what it's like. And again, this is taking place in the 60s, so they wanted to show things like diversity and inclusion, all while helping children learn. And it's just so good. There's another funny minute or moment in this where they talk about how they took Sesame Street on tour, and thousands upon thousands of kids came, and they're all excited because they're Big Bird is yellow, because they had black and white TVs, so they didn't know the color of Big Bird, which I think is kind of funny. And so they're all excited to see Big Bird is yellow. And there's a whole bit in here where they talk about the creation of Big Bird and how it was hard to get his color right at first, and so he was kind of orange, and he's there's pictures in here too, which is really cool. Wait, I'll show you one. So there's Bert and Ernie. There's pictures throughout the book, and it's just so interesting. It also talks about, there's the electric company they talk about, and Zoom, and the history of all these shows, and why they created these shows. And Zoom was one of the first ones that they made that was interactive, the children that were watching could write into the show, and it's just so good. And it also talks about why it's so important to have public media, and the end made me cry because he basically talks about how they struggled to keep and to pitch this idea of public media to children, children's shows, and have it go on air, and then they struggled keeping it, and there were issues, they were invited to the White House, and then they took away their award because they were afraid that I think it was the Sesame Street was going to outshine or something, and they wouldn't agree he was afraid that they wouldn't agree to, like, the president was afraid they wouldn't agree to, like, his terms or something, or, like, an agreement. And so they, like, took it away, and yeah, it was just really bad. And so there's, like, the whole thing of, like, how hard it was to get like, PBS Kids, as it is now, on air, and the different shows that they went through, like Electric Company and Zoom and Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and it just talks about all of these shows and everything that they went through to get on the air. It's so good, and some of these like were way before my time, so I hadn't even heard of them, so it was interesting to learn about them. And the end, he talks about how like right now we need public media more than ever, and it's kind of like struggling, and there's like issues under, I think this was maybe under Trump's first presidency. I don't know what the publication date is. Hang on, let me check. Yeah, copyright 2020. So this would have been Trump's first presidency. So he was already talking about how he was worried about what's going to happen with PBS and PBS Kids and their access to public media, which leads me to the other piece that I wanted to talk about today, which is that Donald Trump signed an executive order, and he wants to take away federal funding, all federal funding for local broadcasting, so PBS and NPR, and that includes like PBS News, PBS Kids, like all of it. He wants to take away all the funding, and it's so awful because PBS does nothing but help people and like help kids, and it gives all people, but people who are maybe poor or just can't afford regular broadcasting, like access to news and TV and what have you. And like that's the whole point of this book, is that it gives kids of lower income a chance to like learn, and a chance to just like have TV and like be a kid. And Donald Trump wants to now take all of that away because he wants to take away all the federal funding for PBS, and he wants to take away funding for NPR and PBS and PBS Kids and all of it. And it's so awful. So you can go to protectmypublicmedia.org, and please do this, and you can sign a petition. You can send a letter to your representatives to tell them that we want PBS, and we want PBS Kids, and we want NPR, and we want all these PBS News, we want public media, because it's so important to have, and it's so important to have access to for everyone, but especially people who were like me, grew up as like a PBS kid, and just need this. We need public media, and shows like Sesame Street don't do any harm, and they're just good. And so you can also go to pbs.org and read about it on their site and donate. They need our funding and help more than ever, and they have more information on their site. So protectmypublicmedia.org and pbs.org. I will put them down below, link them for you, because Donald Trump wants to take away all their federal funding. And after reading this, I was like, we need this now more. Like, obviously I grew up as a PBS kid, and I loved shows like Zoom and Arthur and Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and I loved that. I watched it every day after school, and it was just my favorite thing. So it makes me so sad that he is being an awful human being, because of course he is. He's terrible, and wants to take away access to this for everyone. So that is it for this week's video. Please read Sunny Days if you have the chance. It's so good. The audiobook is on Spotify. So if you want to listen to the audiobook on Spotify, you can do that. You might be able to find it at your local library. I got this one at the Strand, which is, I feel like, very fitting because New York, Sesame Street, it just seems very perfect. So yeah, please read this. Visit protectmypublicmedia.org, visit pbs.org, and yeah, 10 out of 10, 5 stars, so good. Also, the guy that does the audiobook, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but the guy that does the audiobook for this is so good. That's just a little side note, because I listened to the audiobook while I was reading this. The guy that does the audiobook is so good. And it's funny because he reads, like, they have some of the songs in here, and so he, like, sings the songs, like, as he's doing it. He's just really good, and might be one of my favorite, like, audiobook people that I've heard in a while. So that's this. We need to protect our public media. We need to be reading more books. I also read Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny this week, and I'll maybe talk more about that in my next video, but I read On Tyranny, and one of the lessons on tyranny is that we need to protect institutions, and we need to donate to good causes is another one of his points. And so protecting something like PBS is very important. So yeah. Read this if you would like. So good. You'll love it. That is it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you all, and I will see you next week with a brand new video. Bye!